One of my favorite phrases that has stuck with me for so many years is that you can't edit a blank page.
What were the steps you took to go from actor to screenwriter?
Yeah, so from actor to screenwriter, I acted as a kid. I wrote my first screenplay in 2017, 2018, when I was about 19, 20 years old. The steps I took was, like I mentioned, I had a crazy traumatic experience, and I took that experience of my life and I took that and just turned it into a screenplay, essentially. That was my first ever screenplay, was based on a true story of my life. And then from there, I just had other ideas that I had imagined, and I had already studied. I read, Save the Cat and some other screenwriting books and blogs and things like that. There's probably some other ones I should read. I know there's Story, and there's How to Make a Good Script Great, and I have some of these on my shelf. I haven't finished, but I think it's just doing it. You can only learn so much, and you can only take in so much. You just have to sit down, do it. And one of my favorite phrases that has stuck with me for so many years is that you can't edit a blank page. And so you just have to throw something out there. Like my latest script I have right now, my first draft I wrote over the course of 2 weeks and with about 9 Coronas. And I was sitting on my balcony in West Hollywood and just, I was in that kind of vibe of life. It was when I was reading a lot of Kerouac back then. This was 2022. And I was just like, I bought a 6-pack of Coronas and I'm just typing away. And I'm like, I feel just like Kerouac right now, And then I went back and I looked at it and I'm like, ooh, that's pretty hefty stuff. That's a little much, but, and then you go back and you edit it. And, I've made, 5 revisions to the script, 5 full rewrites, and as well as introduced a whole nother story that was another idea of a movie. A separate movie is now intertwined, so it's these 2 different movie ideas in this one idea. But that wouldn't have come if I didn't sit down and drink the beers and write for 2 weeks. So I think you just have to do it.
How do you decide what movie ideas to work on and what to throw away? What's your screening out process for your own ideas?
Yeah, in terms of figuring out what to work on, I just follow the inspiration. I have a handful of ideas and different projects I've come up with over time, but I really try to follow what I feel called to at the time. My project that I had started writing, this one I was telling you about back in 2022, it's really made its way back around and called to me over the past handful of months. And I have a couple of other projects that I am developing with other writers. I have a co-writing collaboration I'm doing, but that's taking a bit longer. It's a bit slower, but it's not all mine. So that's that's something I am also learning how to navigate. But I think when it comes to solo projects, it's whatever I feel that burning passion and desire and thing to write and to tell. Because if I don't feel that when I'm writing it, there's no way an audience is going to feel anything when they're watching it. I have to have that feeling. Because if I'm not wondering and so excited and questioning what's going to happen next to this character, what decision he's going to make, what he's going to say, how this is going to end up, if I don't feel like that as I'm reading my own screenplay, I almost think it would be more of a harm than good to produce.
Sure. So you don't want to necessarily just sort of make a popcorn movie. You want there to be a real, not a message, because I know that's a bad word right now, but it's something where it really impacts somebody.
Yeah, not necessarily one message. I think movies are so multi-layered. It's hard to, if you only have one message, it's probably not much of a movie, to be honest. But yeah, I would say, it's really about just having the feeling that pulls you in and following that.
Sure, and that's what got you in 2017, sort of with the Coronas, or no, that was
2022. 2017 was my first screenplay, that I had written about my life, and that was just something that I think it was cathartic for me, getting it out and almost revisiting my near past that I had just lived, and my recent 6 to 8 months I had just lived, and it would help me. I would think about this story. And it would just kind of help me go through and realize, to the fullest extent, the decisions I made and the impact they had on me. And I think they had such an impact on me that I felt it should be a story to tell.
And sorry, did you make that movie?
No, I didn't. I think I was a very amateur writer when I wrote it, and it was my first screenplay. I actually revisited the screenplay and read it, and I would definitely need to rewrite it if I wanted to do that one. But I also don't think it's relevant now. It was relevant at the time. There were certain things in the world that were going on, and particularly in the U.S. law in our country for things I was dealing with. And so it was relevant and made sense, but nowadays it wouldn't. I don't think it would be. That screenplay almost would have needed to be released when I wrote it as a film.
Okay.
So I think the times are gone,
Sure.
And it's more so just a story I have.
How have you gained confidence in your writer's voice?
You know, I can't say I'm fully 100% confident in my writer's voice. Because I'm always trying to grow, and I'm always critiquing my own writing, and then I'm going back and I'm watching other films, or I'm reading other screenplays, and then or even talking to other writers that I'm friends with and I collaborate with, or even I watch back my own film, right? So I directed and edited my own film off rip, and as I'm in the editing room, and I'm like, man, I would have written that differently now, but I wrote the script 3 years ago. And so what I've come to realize is there's always going to be an evolution, and to just be okay with where you're at, but at the same time, be intentional about the growth. I think I've become not necessarily fully just confident, but just comfortable with where I'm at, because what I realized about my last film was when I look at it, I say, oh, okay, well, that was where I was at the time, and that was the best I could do with what I had known. And so when obviously 3 years later, when the movie's done and it's out, well, I hope I'm a better writer by then, because if I'm not, then there's something wrong.
Well, is that something that is sort of a blessing and a curse, in that maybe at times you're not satisfied with something, and you're always trying to go for more, maybe even in yourself? I know it doesn't mean bigger, better outside of yourself, but is that something that's in you?
Yeah, I think you have to release it at some point, because for me, there is always this desire of making things perfect and better. And even with my film that I'm screening in a couple of days at a theater, I look at that movie and I'm like, oh, I want to fix that, change that. But I would also need a bit more money and a bit more time, and get people back, and bring this company back in to work on the sound, or these little things. And I kind of got to a point where, okay, this is micromanaging to the greatest level. These are things that only I'm going to notice, and the audience is still going to get impacted the same way, even if this little thing is not adjusted. But it's a great mental note for next time. I make great mental notes of, okay, well, now I know when I make my next film, I need to be really clear to this department about this, because this wasn't fulfilled in this way, for example. And so it's all just a learning experience.
What section of the bookstore or the library do you go to first?
I guess it changes as I age. I know I haven't gotten to age a whole lifetime yet, but it was fantasy at first, and I still go to the fantasy section for sure. Brian Staveley is one of my favorite authors. He's got a great trilogy, The Emperor's Blades, Chronicles of the Unhewn Throne, great series, and he's starting a new trilogy in the same world, which I read the first one of it. So definitely fantasy. I would say I was in the spiritual section for a little while, Christian, but then also, other just spiritual things that, I don't necessarily look into other religions, but, other perspectives, I guess I would say. And then, let's see, I'd say those are the main two. And I really got, who I really got into is Jack Kerouac. I've read probably 5 of his books, and I've been getting into, it's kind of the setting and the space that my next film, that my latest screenplay I've written takes place in, is that sort of traveling on the road in the 50s. It's inspired by that. And so I've read a bunch of his books. I've been getting into really just loving grounded stories that feel fantastical. And I think that's what Jack's life was like. Just bumming it on the road, and you think about that. You're like, man, I live here in this city. I do this on a day-to-day, and what would it be like to just jump on a train and not know where you're going? you know, and that's the magic to his writing, is it is fantasy in reality. So yeah, fantasy and then drama, adventure.
Have you come close to actually doing it? Just whether it's train or
Oh,
automobile?
the traveling. Well, the thing is I've been to almost every state. A lot of it from working on films and projects, but you know, I've taken road trips. I helped a friend renovate a van into a home from LA. We drove up to Michigan in 2018, renovated the van throughout July, spent 4th of July on Lake Michigan, drove back. So I've definitely had my fair share of adventures. I went skydiving last year in Yosemite for the first time. I swam with sharks in Hawaii this year. So yeah, I've definitely had trips. But I've not done it to the point of, you know, full-time living on the road and just bumming it. I've definitely dreamed about it. I've dreamed about taking my guitar and just being one of those guys that's a musician, shows up at bars, plays, you know, for a few hours, makes $100 and just goes to the next town. You know, it's definitely a season of life that I think would be fun. I don't know if I've missed it or if it's in the future, we'll see. But yeah, I haven't quite lived full-time on the road yet.
How does the genre of fantasy influence the stories that you write? You said you used to gravitate more toward them, but...
Yeah, I think fantasy is in everything I write, even if it's a grounded story. There's always kind of a looming spiritual element to it, and there's always a fantastical imagination, at least in the characters themselves, even if they don't have the fantastical life that, you know, you might see in Narnia or anything like that. And then also in the filmmaking style and the editing. You know, obviously fantasy is a bigger budget genre, and so I would love to get to that place of, you know, making fantastical things. It's always been my dream. I have many stories that are like that. But I think you can find it in the everyday moments of life and in the indie dramas that takes place in a small town on the beach. You know, I think you can find the fantasy just in the way a character looks off in the distance.